Kia ora, and welcome to Underpin Blancmange. We've had a cracking day today. We were fortunate enough to have Freya come into the office and take an interview with us for our first in our series of videos named Language Profile, where we actually ask questions of people learning languages, not just English, but Spanish and other languages, and try and get some feedback on their experiences of the language process, how they think it's benefited them or not, and difficulties and tips they have in learning languages. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you soon.
Hi, I'm Freya, soy estudiante. En este momento estoy viviendo en la Ciudad de México. En février, je vais aller à Paris pour vivre ahí. I would say the hardest part is actually, it's like keeping fit. I would say it's the amount of practice that you need to keep it up. Because, for instance, living here, I've been here for 4 months now, I haven't spoken a word of French and I've forgotten most of it already. Like, it takes a lot of being around French people, being, immersed in the culture that you are speaking the language of, to be able to be properly speaking it well, I think. So keeping it up is an effort. I would say don't get bogged down by the element of practicing, needing to practice regularly. Don't get bogged down when you hit a wall. I definitely hit a wall when I first moved here. For me, it was like I couldn't understand a lot of what people were saying. And I was thinking, God, this is so difficult. But actually, you do break through that, and it does get easier. People think it doesn't, but it really, really does. It's just about persevering, and also with things like reading, for example. When I first start, even no matter how much practice I've had with the language, when I open a book, say in French, for example, the first page takes me about 10 minutes to read, and then it gets faster, and so you get into a rhythm. So I think perseverance would be my key tip. Okay, in my opinion, there are 2 types of language learner. One is confident and one is not confident. I am a not confident learner. I think, the non-confident learners make the mistake that they don't branch out enough. They don't dare to say anything, therefore they don't make mistakes and they don't learn from mistakes. So I think being a non-confident learner is worse than being a confident learner, in that confident learners make the mistakes of the language itself, but at least they can learn from that. Yeah. I think it's like the best way to learn. It's the only way to learn. I think actually applying the rules that you've learned. For instance, in England, they teach it in a very, I describe it as mathematical, the way that they teach languages. It's like you learn your verb tables and you learn a structure of a sentence with like one word plus another word equals this. And I think that's totally pointless unless you can actually put it into a sentence and use it with people who actually speak that language as their mother tongue. So yeah, I think very, very useful. Okay, so I said speaking is the most useful. Obviously grammar is very important as well. Like, you have to have a foundation upon which you then apply your language in later life. So I think I would say learn the rules, but also apply them. So it's not one or the other. So the grammar rules are your foundation, and using the language is like I'd say using the language is the most important thing, but it's useless if you can't understand how to apply it, if you see what I mean. My favourite, I don't really use books that much. I can't really engage. That might just be because I'm young and technological, but I'm a fan of Memrise. One of my teachers in school actually told me about Memrise, and you can do it on the computer as well, which I really like, because if there's something that I can only do on my laptop or only do on my phone, I feel a bit, I mean obviously it's still useful, but anyway, you can either find lists that people have already made, or you can make your own. For vocab, yeah, I'd say for vocab it's very good. For grammar, not so much, because it tests you on, it kind of comes up with a word, and then you have to click on what it is, but it brings it back every sort of 3 rounds or something. So it's a really, really good system to sort of put things in your long-term memory. And it tells you also when you've got something in your long-term memory and when it's still in your short-term memory. So it's a good system, engaging. I personally think that the lack of structure I would struggle with, because I find it really hard to motivate myself to do things. You know, the only reason I would set aside time each day is because someone has told me to. So, but that's just me. I think the advantages would be that you have the freedom to do as much or as little as you want. But that again could be the worst part of it, because if you're not very good, if you're not very good at motivating yourself to do things, then you just you'd never learn the language. You wouldn't be able to, I don't know, put yourself out there, speak to people. Yeah, I think the best way to learn a language without doing an academic course would be to go and live in the country where the language is spoken, where your target language is spoken, because otherwise I think it's pretty difficult. It's also because language is a very interactive activity. Language is communication. You do it with other people, and a lot of my course is speaking. It's very sociable actually, and I think if you're just teaching yourself, you take away that element, that social element of it. So yeah, I don't know. That's why living in the place would be important, because you'd have to make yourself go out and socialise with people. Totally depends. First of all, on your age. Secondly, on where you are. Thirdly, on your attitude, I'd say. Firstly, your age. I mean, the younger you are, the easier it is to learn a language, because your brain is not as set in stone, as it were. So babies who are brought up with 2 languages, it's the easiest thing in the world for them. But, for example, I was trying to teach my grandmother some French, and it was just, I mean, she just couldn't do it. And the same thing, and not necessarily with languages, I also tried to teach her how to use a new computer, and it's almost a phobia for her. So yeah, your age is important. I think, what was the second one? The place, so your environment. If you're in the country of the target language, obviously you're then surrounded by its culture, you're surrounded by the language all the time, you're hearing it all the time, therefore you adopt a mindset that's a lot more of that culture, of that language. Like, for example, the other night I had a dream in Spanish, which I felt was a big breakthrough for me, but that's only because I'm hearing Spanish all the time. If I was with English people, I don't think that would happen. And thirdly, yeah, the attitude. I mean, you just become fluent so much more quickly if you're actually wanting to. If you're wanting to learn, if you're eager to become fluent. If that's your goal and you're set on it, then you can do it. But yeah, so if you've got those 3, if you're pretty young, yeah, and living in a country where you want to learn that language and you're forcing yourself to get out there, make friends, speak the language simply, then the process of becoming fluent will be a lot quicker, I think.
How about for somebody like me, who is not necessarily quite young? If I was living in England, how long do you think the process would be for somebody like me to become good at speaking the language, kind of fluent?
I think fluent as knowing pretty much every word there is to know. But I think fluent can also, since living here, I've realised being fluent can mean just being able to get by easily. And I think in England, if you were learning, you're good at speaking Spanish, so you're fine. I think the age is less of a factor. I meant between like a 70-year-old and a 20-year-old, but it would be harder because your environment is very English and it's not. For example, if you're learning Spanish, I don't know. For me, your surroundings are very, very important. But that might be just me. I think I'm very easily influenced by what's around me, and I take in a lot of what's going on around me. So for me, that's a big element of learning. But some people find that, there were people in my Spanish class at school who learned very well the English way, like they teach like mathematical, you learn the rules and then you apply it. But for me, that's because when I heard them speaking, that sounded quite calculated and a bit robotic. So I think for the element of fluency that makes you sound like you're from that country, maybe not with the accent, but the natural element of it, then that would take a lot longer, I think. God, I'm so happy I came to Mexico. The first time I was exposed to Latin American Spanish was last year when I went to Colombia, and I way prefer it. The Spanish that they teach us in England is the Spanish from Spain, and I'm not a huge fan, I won't lie. For me, it's very strong, it's very intense, and it's very fast. And the Spanish in Mexico is, what's great about it is that they still pronounce consonants, so you can actually hear the word, but it's much softer. And I think it helps that the people and the people's attitude is quite different as well. It comes across in the way that they speak. I see Spanish people as a very strong nation. I don't know, the Spanish people that I've met, from my experience, have been quite intense, whereas Mexican people are a lot more relaxed. And I think, I don't know, that could have just been my Spanish teacher at school, but the Spanish that I was taught was a bit much. And this Spanish is much more relaxed, and I'm very happy about that.
I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.